Why the subject of mental health fascinates me. Well, if you actually look at the content that I've created, not all of it is on YouTube. A lot of it wasn't uploaded because I didn't have a digitized version of stuff that's on DVDs. But challenging the mind control over today's mass consciousness. I wrote the article in 2005, was published on numerous websites, still shared to this day, mass mind control through network TV. Sometimes I think some of the very people that shared that article have missed the boat in identifying some of that same mind control today. There's a lot of people that I've been noting this over and over and over again, have been talking about mind control and the elite and the shadow government, and yet I think some people have failed to see the writing on the wall. And so there's a number of different reasons why people are stressed out. Not everybody agrees on those reasons. People are still coming to the table, so to speak, with sharing about their problems. It still is a society that values its shaming. And so there is purpose in sharing what's going on. You know, it's interesting. I talked earlier in another video about how Netflix and the mainstream media, you know, they talk about the paranormal. They have documentaries where they actually have a title called Paranormal Empathy, where they talk about it like it's a legitimate thing. It's the idea of the sixth sense. And it is legitimate. But Netflix isn't the first place where you want to go to be exposed to that, or the mainstream version of the paranormal. It's all around us. It's even within us. It's a part of us. There is no separation. And so on this planet, there are certain realities. Getting to the main point, it's normal for an evolved human to reach a certain level of awareness regarding their environment around them. I want to keep this simple because we're going to get into something that Jared sent. It's some really interesting spiritual commentary on mental health and things that people are overlooking. In fact, I think that a mental health professional should be interested in the material. Again, why is this coming up? Because when I started my media outlet, or platform rather, my Access TV show, it's nothing that's been incorporated. It's just what I do. Outside the Box TV with Alex Ansary. I've been talking about a day and a period where more people would drop out because of the pressures within our society. Because of the magnetic field influence over us, some people can't handle all that energy. And it's a theory. It's considered, unfortunately, quack science to a lot of people. The idea that we're affected by magnetic fields, that periods in which there's more sunspots or lunar activity, that lunatic, especially when you have that lunar and solar energy mixing together, plus other astrological things. There's a number of different unknown energies and psychological influences or influences over the human psyche. There are particular phenomena in the world of psychology where they've discovered mass psychoses, you know, that have swept populations. And so what I'm here to discuss is how I'm noticing in newspapers a discussion about the suicide problem and more, I guess, ads, you know, PSAs relating to that, but validation of my theory of certain areas like mountain range areas. I became aware of this last year, that there's less serotonin produced in the brain of people that live at higher elevations. In fact, there's an imbalance with also the dopamine levels. And so that doesn't mean that someone is automatically going to be sick. That's actually the excuse for someone to exercise, live a little healthier, and exercise definitely with regards to the lungs. So smoking, you know, there's another reason why I'm taking that more seriously, quitting the smoking of cigarettes, of tobacco. Now I have about 5 or 6 months. I connected that with an increase in personal stress. I drink coffee, but I'm thinking about holding that more in moderation. Other things in moderation. So as we get started here through trial and error, I mean, and this is just like in the last couple of months, you know, what is the main problem with regards to stress and or issues going on in the world, and the best way to cope with it? How certain things can be a detriment. Social media addiction, we've covered that. There's a lot of other people on this planet that have been waking up to the need for a digital detox. And so people are becoming sick with regards to or caused by things that are new to our environment. So consider this, like, we're still early on with regards to human evolution and awareness of certain mental health issues and stressors, ways to deal with it, and ways to evolve beyond it. We're still, like, unfortunately, it's a society that by design is socially engineered to be at war with itself. So people are programmed that if they hear someone else share their pain about their life experiences, that they're automatically supposed to be defensive and then get political with it, or call someone a snowflake or XYZ, enter the blank here. And to me, like, that's the hallmarks of a mentally ill society, where people start shutting down and thinking that they're waking up as a result of shutting other people down. So there's a lot of different things to discuss here, but what's considered mentally sound, I've been talking about this on my nature walks, but it's important that I go deeper into this in my little barn shed out in the woods, centered at the desk without moving, and go deeper into this idea and also share with you some ideas from the audience. But what's considered mentally sound in a lot of cases is insane. There are certain people, I talked about dabbling in the dark side of recreational drugs in the early 2000s before I kind of found the light in the alternative media. I went through a turbulent late teens. So I went really quickly into a world of, I guess, the state sanctioned, pretty much forced to go into some of their recovery programs. That's an issue of mental health and life skills, basically. Healthy environments where people, and this is in theory, find a way to get clean of their particular thing. For me, I had to find my own way. It ended up being alternative media and not some of the typical like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, which is there for some people, but that's their path. And so to make a long story short, and I've talked about this in other videos, I had to find my own way. But in those particular facilities, I came across people that were in position of counselor, were in position of XYZ, because maybe they went to school or through some other means. There was a surplus in money for drug recovery programs in the 2000s. And so many jobs were created out of the increased need, and the available money for those programs went into effect. And Portland kind of had a social experiment going on where at one point people were thrown into jail with harsh penalties for certain things. Then various drug programs became implemented throughout the United States to give people a way out of a felony conviction. And what I've noticed in these particular fields, and even other fields that I haven't got involved in, like applying for affordable housing or anything like that, there are all these bureaucracies where people are appointed to positions in mental health fields where in some cases they don't really qualify. In some cases it's really about them making a paycheck and pushing papers. Now, that's not to say that there are people out there that that don't care. There are many people that do care and are qualified. I think that it requires evaluation after a period of time, whether those people that are decent, that are heartfelt, that are soul-filled, are still in the in some of these fields, or if they're pushed out like other industries by some of the more dominant sociopathic personality types. So there's a lot of things that are missing from today's mental health professionals. And that would be my assumption without knowing what's going on in every single city, but seeing that there's a real disconnect. For example, there's an awareness that certain areas are seeing more suicides than other areas. But when you look at some of these articles, they don't seem to address some of the root causes. And one of them, other than solar flares and magnetic field influence, the lack of community is pretty stark to people that are outsiders, people like myself or others that came from like either the West Coast or the East Coast that are living in rural Colorado. We can see how people can really stand out as an outsider if they talk different, act different, walk different, have a certain type of dress. This is male, female, different ethnicities. It goes beyond judging ethnicity. And there are areas in which people straight up judge people that think for themselves. And so this is something that I've noticed in this community. I've noticed it in other communities, right? And there's an old Japanese saying that the nail that stands out, there's a nail right here. I would just nail in a new light right up there, to add a little bit more color balance, get a little bit more improvement, try to attempt to make some improvements. But the nail that stands out is the first that gets hit. There's also another reason why I'm glad I never went viral or got viral on YouTube and got very involved, never got very involved with certain people that are high up in the alternative media. I've had my fair share of brief interviews with various individuals. Speaking on my own experience, I've had to really pull on my own internal energy to continue to believe in myself and move forward. It's difficult enough facing, and I will be 40 in a year and a half. And I want to maintain what youth I have. I don't want to burn it away. I want to live a healthier lifestyle. I want to have a lifestyle with less stress. And there's certain things that I've tried to do in the last month in order to do that. For my own mental health. And a lot of it is centered, as you've noticed, around speaking my truth outside this main studio living space, to be out in nature. Running water has been an important thing. Identified all the top trails pretty much within my area and got my top 3 down. And I am planning to visit another place that I haven't been to in a while in about 5 days. They normally charge to get in there, but after the 30th, it's free. It's another national forest hiking spot. And some of these places can be really inspiring for me to speak my truth at those locations. They're also, like resting, stepping back from YouTube as it caused me stress from demonetization. Okay, well, so much of my identity has been wrapped up with this. I'm stepping back from that. I'm stepping back from it. I thought it was really interesting, the timing of it. And I chose to use it as a life lesson, as something to elevate me, to bring me forward. By not knowing what's coming next as we go into winter where there's going to be snow and traffic is difficult. You're talking about a whole aura of uncertainty and the anxiety that it brings. I'm just taking a deep breath. It's been a roller coaster over the last 45 days. And I'll just leave it at that. Like I said, it's difficult to travel basically a distance comparable to the East Coast. There's a commute distance between New Jersey and New York City, and it's about an hour, right? So from where I live off the grid in rural Colorado, get to the next town over, the larger one, where there's way more temp jobs. That's 70 miles one way, not straight, but we're talking about like a mountain range, to a point where my car doesn't drive well above 55 or 60, so I don't. And that really irritates the nice hybrid cars that are doing 75. I don't got nothing against somebody with a hybrid. It's just that sometimes it gets old. And it'll always be that way. It gets old having the oldest car in the parking lot. But I'm really grateful to have what I have. So basic spiritual principles. We're going to get into the list in a little bit, just finishing up my introduction and getting some of this off my chest. I said before, there's a lot of things now in the mainstream in movies that deal with spirituality and finding one's purpose. How much of that's overlooked in today's mental health field? And so there could be things that are out there that people can access that promote sound, positive mental health, positivity, things of that nature. And the world, more or less, a lot of people, but not everyone, seems to be in position to try to profit off of that mental illness or that homelessness. The other term that hasn't been used yet in this video, but has been used in other videos, poverty pimps, the poverty industry. So you have the poverty industry, the drug recovery industry, the mental health industry, in the wide distribution of drugs. I even really need to get into that, big pharma. And so there's the way that people that are really suffering that never once dealt with a breakdown, don't know about solar influences, lunar influences, that's cosmic ray influences from a solar minimum. Those are some of my areas of input. These things are not recognized. These things are not recognized by today's psychologists. A lot of them are not clued in to some basic things about nature. And it's just that simple. It's the way that they're taught. It's the way that they're trained. Now, where am I going with this? There's a point to this. You look at the articles, again, about the suicide awareness, and where do we see places where we can give our feedback? What does the community think? Kind of like a letters to the editor, where there's engagement. What do we see? Government websites and sources telling us about their problem, reaction, solution. And their agencies that are there and their individuals that are there to talk to us. And it's not that that's bad. It probably has done some good. I'm sure it does, as well as AA and NA and other functions. And maybe some people need to be, protected from themselves if they're on their way to an overdose. I could see elements of the system working that way, and not just all police state all the time. I believe in being tapped into reality, and not just being disconnected from the way things actually are. And I've had my own life experiences. It's just that real understanding of the human body, real healing, and the modern day psychology and modern day healthcare. We haven't even gotten into healthcare, but we're talking about like a general concept while mentioning healthcare as the focus, mental health. There's a lot of people out there that are unhinged. And I don't know if you've noticed it, right? But a lot of people just find easy things to blame for it, even immigration. And there may be some contributing factors, but I mean, come on, folks. There are some people that have absolutely flipped their noodle in the last decade. An increase in people even hearing voices. Are there other influences? Well, you know what? Every official in the mental health field would view an opinion of gang stalking or targeted individualism as absolute mental illness. So don't forget that. For those of you that think that some of that stuff could be actually possible, or that people could be getting sick from living near a cell phone tower, here we are in the age of 5G and the alarm about 5G. You know as well as I do, there can be a mental health influence from those artificial magnetic fields over the human brain. Okay, so let's get to this commentary. Insights into changing social dynamics. The new psychology for the new age, winners and losers. Good reference, Alan Watt, YouTube, Sorcerer Circle at the End of an Age. Key insight from talk. So that looks like what we're about to get into. Large segments of the population that can no longer survive in the system. So this is interesting because one of the things that I talked about is, those people that are well adjusted to a sick society aren't so healthy. And so there are people that are like, oh my God, I'm not so well adjusted to the sick society, and they're labeled mentally ill. I could be labeled mentally ill by the system's actual own measurements. But it's like, are we mentally ill, or are we waking up to that which is wrong? Kind of like my blog I wrote in 2009. It's through the pain that we can find the way home. It's also through within that the healing has to occur. So these are some contemplative insights. Human Resources quotes, euthanasia, forgetting the elderly who are not useful, invalid, encouraging suicide for those that can't cope. So he's talking about this socially engineered reality that we don't want, but it's the one that's being directed at us. Increasingly nihilistic suicidal ideations, adapting to higher levels of competitiveness and stress, city life, upgrade yourself to cope with more stress until you break. I was talking about the musical chairs. Horrifying habitat, areas, peasant class trapped in cities. Collective therapy for collective hysteria, neurosis, distractors or band-aids. New agey cheeseburger simulation and fantasy. Be all happy all the time, their version of positivity. The abolition of rights and liberty, return of the terrorization of the public, horror, brutality. Viewing the poor as suffering from karma, mental problems, spiritual problems. Again, we see society doing this. Buffers in the mind, conscious and subconscious rationalization / barriers. Keep an individual from seeing, listening, feeling one's internal depth programming subconscious. Triggers, conditioning, programming, emotional charges, hidden violence, hidden motivations, deep hidden fears, etc. Scene 2. The external field spheres, structures the horror show. Cognitive buffers prevent seeing. Transcending horror, suffering darkness, one must first see. First step is last step. And I'm not sure necessarily what all of this means. It's just, of course, a lot of information shared. I'm just going to try to share most of it. Modern therapy, manifesting as busy bees, collective standardization, degradation. Elderly, no longer passing on wisdom, no longer respected, viewed as incompetent or not having a relevant voice. In some ways, yes, I see elements of the new generation, but I don't see all millennials the same way. And I don't like being judged myself, but there is a sense of the old world and the elderly being run over by the machines of today. Children being raised by the state, certainly state TV, real information, insight not being passed down. We talk about YouTube control, the algorithm, information. Pavlovian conditioning, training the public, work to reward ourselves with some toy or some pleasure at the end of the month. That one stood out. Teachers' toolkits. using shunning techniques in the education and school system for those who don't fall into groupthink dynamic. There's Pink Floyd, right? Right? Those that don't do their homework don't get any pudding, or something to that effect. Teachers' toolkits. Too much of a chore to do the thinking themselves. Happiness is buying something. A healthier lifestyle is where you constantly are involved with approved outlets and staying constantly busy. No one is allowed to stop and think, reflect, contemplate, heal. Everyone is isolated from everyone else unless drunk. When sober, they can't communicate with each other. The masses become neurotic when they're no longer having a sense of continued continuity through old traditions or being engaged with the world. Then they reintroduce all the old social engineering techniques, Return of the Gods. Return of the Gods program, that's its own one. And there's some videos that I've created about a lot of the false god archetype worship that's kept a lot of people in the false spirituality matrix. So personal insights, most people have checked out, most simply don't want to know. Most people want to believe in the system, and they simply can't face the dysfunctional system that was created for them for specific purposes to create a new system. If they did face certain realities, they would crack up and they would destroy their cognitive buffers and create a domino effect in the mind. The cascading domino effect, increasing level of awareness, life is not a bowl of cherries, and fantasy. Okay, so just pausing there, catching my breath. I'm going to give a little bit more of his insight from another contribution dealing with relaxation. Because one of the things that I was reading in a book over here, I've talked often about being drawn to books at the thrift store. By the way, I haven't read A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, but he relates to, he talks about the pain body. And so the pain body could be something that sounds like what I and others talk about, you know, archonic entities or a psychic attack, or just a spiritual attack or a spiritual attachment. And most people just generalize it as that. And so a lot of built up emotional and trauma that we're still storing in our body, storing in our mind. So in that introduction to psychic protection, I talk about the rose technique, and there are others where we pull out those traumatic images or images that we're stuck on. And this is actually something that's discussed quite a bit. With visualization workshops. Now, this book here is the one that I found that deals with visualization, but I got the Eckhart Tolle book, of course, because it deals with, and I heard about this from another YouTuber. We can get a lot of information real quick from other YouTubers that talk about the subject matter. But Eckhart Tolle and books like that is where the mental health field, in a way, meets the spiritual field. And I haven't gotten all the content. I stay away from stuff where there's a lot of mass interest in it. But there's also a lot of stuff that's judged as stuff of the dark side, that's self-improvement, if people aren't familiar with it, or it just seems new agey to them. I always talk about differentiation. So there's new age, but we don't necessarily agree on what the category is. A lot of people stuck in atheism and orthodox religions will label anything that's not in their worldview, to the best of their knowledge, as new age. I would say there's plenty of things that it's a resurgence of those spiritual ideas. It's been a mistake to label it new age, because new age, as I've come to understand it and be exposed to it, is a deception, is an alien agenda deception. Oh yeah. So genuine spiritual ideas are not new age. There may be a resurgence of spiritual ideas, but the stuff that's that flies under the banner of new age, people should be careful, just like careful about associating themselves with quote-unquote conspiracy theory, as I've learned as well, or any box. Visualization by Change, or Visualization for Change, is the name of this book. Probably paid only a few dollars for it. And it has a lot of good information, and it was written in 1994. You know, the general idea, I'm going to summarize it, but we are like mind screwed with like these images. Especially like if someone watches a lot of negative stuff, like media and stuff, a lot of negative images, a lot of emotionally charged images, and people internalize that. 9/11 was bigger than just what you might think. What a lot of people have said. The wars in the Middle East, that's a part of it. There's also the emotional turmoil. the images, terrorist images. Now, I'm just giving you an example. Same thing with zombies, the desensitization to certain images. So there's all different types of stuff that the subconscious has taken in through the content that we viewed. Of course, this you know. Of course, just like taking a shower, it's part of regular maintenance for us to do that, or just something for our hygiene or teeth, something we have to eat, maybe drink some water. So there's things like a spiritual shower. I've talked about this in other videos. Other people talk about shielding techniques. But ultimately, there's a lot involved here in being senior to what's going on in your own mind. Not everybody's present. Not everybody's like in the body. Not everybody's present with the type of imagery that they're creating. A lot of people aren't aware that they're creating their own reality. And it's a little different than the way it's presented by The Secret. That's another thing that's promoted by the mainstream. That version of the law of attraction, watch now on Netflix. Watch now on Vudu. I think that must be the same company. So I've seen some of the same stuff, same type of website layout. See, and that's a way in which the system and way it's functioning for those people that are genuine free thinkers, that are creators of their own content. They may go through economic stress because we're in a world of competition, or they want to box us out of the market or disincentivize what we're doing. So there could be some stress related to being held down, if you will, by the corporate man. And we have to work to get outside the box of the paradigm they want to put us in, of the suppression they want to put us in. I'm glad that I have personally a lot of different interests, so I can come back and provide you with content. I just have to remember to eat, not drink too much coffee, make sure I'm drinking some fluids. And it's been great having one of my first pets, or my first pet as an adult. I mean, when you talk about like obediency at the level of a kitten, where it doesn't go beyond the property, and was already and there it is making some noise. It was already potty trained. I think there's something to telepathy with animals. It was something that I researched before I got this cat. The other cats are gone. They were wild, a little bit of a aggressive pack. Animals can definitely help us connect with our own divine nature and true nature. There's something about connecting with cats and animals and our energy field, restoring our energy field. And by the way, I do live off the grid without smart meters and electricity. So if we want to do an updated video on all the different reasons, I know I did one not too long ago. It's about mental health and getting away from unnatural magnetic fields, which is what comes from these unnatural power grids. And anywhere you have a dense population, you have the cell phone towers and what's being rolled out with the 5G. If you're in a pool of people that are sick, like when I talked about it earlier, had the heroin problem. Where did I start doing that? In a studio apartment in the year 1999 in March, as the solar cycle was going through a turbulent one right after, during a maximum period, with all the anxiety about Y2K, being on my own in Portland. And a lot of other people were already on that track. The magnetics were unfortunately in support of that. The intense energy, I wasn't as experienced yet enough in life to rechannel that in a new positive way. I was too young and looking to have some experiences, live on the wild side of life, and they happened to appear. Look and ye shall find. Just be careful what you're looking for and how deep you look for it. And the purpose of getting into that is I saw that period of the mental health dysfunction of the addict. But I also saw the mental health recovery element of the addict as 2003 and 4 and 5 came around, as the sun was less active. And even though the war started and there was turbulence, there was also a sense of waking up as a result of 9/11, regardless of your view on that day, and the subsequent wars. It united many of us, and this is a system. And with the movie The Matrix, the books from Ike, and whatever your journey may have been, for some of us listening to certain people that we no longer like, but we woke up in the way that we woke up. And so there are periods in which when I found my path in life, that disease, that monkey was off my back. Never got deep into, the dark side, heavier side of that world. I got out pretty quick. Not as quick as some other kids. I saw some people that were like in AA, all they did was drink, and they were like, oh, I'm an alcoholic after like 6 months. I'm like, what? Yeah, me, I waited till I was an adult, got way deep into the needle for a few years, and then found the system And that was like a period of rebuilding myself. And we may fall all the way down and rebuild ourselves, but once you go through it at least once and you're around people and or institutionalized, then you get to see the system from the inside. The type of people that are hired for counselors, the reality as it is. And like I said, the poverty pimp, mental health pimp industry, where a lot of people are getting paid, they're collecting taxpayer dollars off of a growing problem, but they're not really dealing with the issue and they're behind the times. You know how behind the times some healthcare plans are? Oregon would mandate somebody like me in 19, what was that? What year was I in that? That was 2000. That was the year 2000 that I was in that program. Mandate somebody to acupuncture while, like, here we are 20 years later, and that's not necessarily part of a medical plan. And the thing is, a lot of people that aren't very like aware of true health, again, true health, you want to deal with true health at the source to prevent disease, the mental disease, the physical disease, all of those things at the sublevel. So when we deal with life force, we're not going deep into this, but you know, ki, chi, prana, ki, the life force, when that's thrown off, other things can be thrown off. So we want to restore the life force. And by the way, vitamin D is lacking a lot of our lives. That's the importance of the full spectrum lights. So I was going in a number of different directions, but segueing from life force, relaxation techniques. And this is a repost from helpguide.org. So I'm going to continue on with this. For many of us, relaxation means zoning out in front of the TV at the end of a stressful day, or YouTube, or Netflix, or Vimeo. But this does little to reduce the damaging effects of stress, especially if you're sitting there watching news. To effectively combat stress, we need to activate the body's natural response. You can do this by practicing relaxation techniques such as deep breathing, meditation, rhythmic exercise, and yoga. Fitting these exercises into your life help reduce stress every day, boost your energy and mood, and improve your mental and physical health. And by the way, I'm just ecstatic that the channel is back to normal. So I've been drinking a fair amount of caffeine as my celebration because I don't drink alcohol very rarely unless it's social. And I don't smoke cigars. So I don't, I'm not smoking cigarettes. I'm not in an area. It's near town. I'll probably go walking pretty soon. But I wanted to address this because this is well written information and he's sharing this from another article, but it all connects. It all connects. I'll remember what I was saying though before with the acupuncture, and we'll get back to this. The acupuncture and restoring the natural body's flow of energy, I believe in that wholeheartedly. I'm not an expert on it. I haven't studied it, but I believe in that. And I believe in the science of that, what that's based on, that there is a real natural flow of energy, and there are certain things that disrupt that flow of energy. And those can be emotional stress and turmoil. So we want to get to the issue early on, and a lot of people haven't been educated about that. And there are people that are elderly that are still taught to trust big pharma and eat the same foods that have perhaps never had a massage. I've never really had a deep massage. But knowing that our body holds stress, because I never really had the money to. And in my experiences, it's always been people, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But it definitely is a practice worth recognizing. The science of therapeutic medicine. Haven't studied it in my own personal life. But do I think that things such as healing touch, which I mentioned earlier, I wasn't necessarily, when I typed that in the description, discussing something sexual. But I mean, like, there is very little touch and community, like, period. And again, back to Colorado, this is a very close society. Not everybody would agree with me. I'm not saying Portland's all that. I'm saying that I've been exposed, thank God, I've been exposed to, I guess, what it feels like, what it looks like when there's a community of outsider independent thinkers in a genuine sense, for it to be like in its golden age moment. Doesn't mean that, they're going to do anything beyond be at that pizza place like me and my old friends at Beautiful Pizza off 37th and Southeast Portland. Holla, but I don't think anybody's still watching from the old days. As I drink some tea here in my McDonald's cardboard cup. But there was a sense of unity and feeling good about, you know, us coming together and then showing films, and other people would walk in. What are these people? Oh, these are conspiracy people. They're shaking their head. And it was funny because we had the OK on Wednesday nights to meet. But so I've known what that's like, and it being a community where I came across, hey, Alex, love your show. And there are people kind of glaring at me, but there's a period where I came across a lot of interesting folks. I just wasn't very good at impressing people and having kind of on-air charisma. What I think people don't know about the on-air charisma always coming out in person. Somebody could be way more intense in person than the 2D version. And this applies to YouTube as well. I don't think all people that like me are aware of that, that like or dislike, but there's like the 2D version, as obviously I look a certain way when I'm sitting here in the particular office or in the shed, and I'll look a different way, or I'm out in the national forest. And somebody could be like, wow, you need to get more. And then somebody else could be watching another video going, wow, you know, you look like you're eating okay in this one, but you look sick in the other one. It's a matter of the angle of the camera. It's a matter of the lighting. And pretty much in general, I'm a similar Alex answer. You have some mild ups and downs, right? Sometimes I shave a little closer than the other days. Some days it's all blotchy and looks like hell. And yes, I notice. And I'm like, palm face. But one big positive, by the way, is I got my first electric shaver. So I've been maintaining with something. You know, there are those luxuries of the grid. And it's nice to live off the grid, but have little toys and luxuries. Here we go. Right? First ever you've seen this. Right? Man, and there's been some wild shaving jobs, and you've been on that path with me, right? And you've been real good about that. You know, there's been days where I'm like, oh my God, this cannot be uploaded. It's like, you know, half the face is shaved, the other place is like, you know, got a big old beard. But yeah, you know, for myself, one of the things that, you know, I don't like to have to think about is. See, to some people, they think it's bad if you look clean cut. But in other areas, it's better to look clean cut than the guy that lives off the grid, especially if people in that community look down upon the poor people that live off grid. So, you know, I try not to look too rough when I go in the market, but sometimes I just don't give a up. You know what I mean? So relaxation with regards to releasing stress. We talked about meditations, and there's various ones you can find online. You know, I can mention that there's a few guided MP3s you can listen to from ascensionhelp.com. There's a couple older videos that I've put out there on YouTube, guided meditation or meditation, grounding meditation, or a description of it. And so there's things you can listen to, or someone else is speaking to where you just let go and close your eyes, right? And one of the things that I'm just going to mention, you know, however you choose to clear out that imagery and gunk, but to recognize the programming. And one of the things in visualizations you can do, you don't even necessarily need to know what that programming is when you're clearing that out or grounding it out, but with the intention to ground out foreign energy and influence, that which is not you, that which is not from the divine, to ground that out and to master those affirmations and to keep it simple. Like they say, KISS. There's various techniques that go in different directions, but the key is making your tools work for you. There was a time where I also put out a series of videos about these topics, and then a lot of weird stuff, interference happened in my life. You know, I've come to learn that if you're vulnerable to being screwed with, if you're in a living situation that's dependent on someone else that can be hijacked, if you will, if you know what I mean, or having the wrong girlfriend, living in someone else's house. Many men have been through many worse situations than I. I'm way lucky, but I went through one experience. And I wouldn't say we became friends later, but I let her add me on Facebook. But when I was living with someone else in 2013, I believe I did experience someone that had the walk-in and went full Arcani, full Archon all the way. And I had to get out of that house. And my decision to get away from her made it worse, to where there was like an emotional terror storm that was directed at me, and it centered around Christmas. And I've noticed various people play different emotional eruption games if they're able to establish cordage in and around periods close to Christmas, specifically, where there's the least amount of light. And so I think that the holidays are periods in which people can unconsciously, psychically attack others, or just cause something in their emotional world. without even knowing what they're doing or what motivates them or why they're extracting why some sort of pleasure button is being pushed within them by something within them or something outside of them, but something pushing their button regardless. And I think often that's the case. People are acting on thoughts that are not their own. So relaxation is something that is mentioned as a place to start to master that level, or not master, but to, ease into that as a normal thing for us in a world where we're very unrelaxed before we start getting into more advanced visualization techniques. But a lot of these things are related. Taking time to relax, ground out the programming, reprogram then with what is right. It's not just about clearing out, but in a lot of cases, it's just about clearing out that gunk from our internal vision screen. But then we also have to reprogram with something positive, bring back that abundance, bring back that life force, engage in particular exercises that maintain that healthy life force, knowing what works for you. Maybe you're a skier, and skiing's a thing that does it for you, man. I don't have that same type of, but I'd be willing to ski. I guess at some point in my life, or snowboard. But, for me, it's more certain other things, Qigong, like movements and exercises. I'd love to take one of those classes officially, by the way. I haven't tried to do Tai Chi since I was a kid, but when I was 15 or 16, it was like I had soul memory. I gravitated to Tai Chi movements when I was, and that's what it did for me as a teenager, even if it isn't perceived by some to be something that can be applied to martial arts, and that's an opinion, because there are different schools of Tai Chi. It certainly is something that connects one with that life force, and maybe at the root, it's the life force anyway that's needed for someone to be competent in the combat arts, or to be fully competent and powerful in speaking, or to be fully competent and powerful in something else. People that are involved in the world of healing need to be very careful. People that are in that industry, about protecting their energy. And I find that awareness to be interesting, what I've learned about that in recent years, and the need to protect yourself. Because I'm on YouTube, and I also have the stated interest in helping people unplug from the matrix. So even having an interest in helping people can cause subtle stress, to where psychic attack is a strong word to kind of maybe describe other things that could be interpreted as psychic attack, because it's a stress on the personal brain waves, because someone's actually on YouTube where there's an energetic cord between obviously the host and the people watching, in a world where if you think about someone and boom, they're texting you. And see, when you add in something like this and YouTube, it's a whole new world, a brave new world where we haven't been. And so there's a fine line in some cases, I think, between a healthy use of social media and an unhealthy use in social media. And for me, so there's been a strategy of downsizing, and recently stepping back from consuming things off YouTube, doing more things outside, writing more, reading more books, and then just being open and trying to let go of the fear of uncertainty. And I'm glad that I went that route instead of a panicked route. And so there's more active ways that try to get us to relax and deprogram from being stuck in something. And something as simple as just walking near certain rivers, or putting out affirmations and visualizations at the river, or certain things of that nature that can have an effect, a powerful effect. And we could see something like that within days that confirms what it is that we're doing. So this gets into stress and the dangers of it. I'm going to get into some of the other things here and then close. Okay, the important thing to remember is that simply laying on the couch, reading or watching TV while sometimes relaxing isn't enough to produce the physical and psychological benefits of the relaxation response. Translation, just watching YouTube spiritual videos may not be enough. And maybe some of the things that we're learning about, maybe write down and practice some of those things with the technology off and the internet off. There is some of those brainwave music channels that people listen to with headphones. Maybe try listening to that after you've downloaded it or gone to onlineconverter.com and turned it into an MP3, put it on your podcast or your iPod or something to that effect, and then plug in some stereo headphones and then experience that while sitting under the sun, while drinking water charged by the sun. Maybe get some green superfood instead of looking at the computer. And so like breaking up that time that we look at the computer, at the color of the computer, and then experience that healing sound out in nature. Using a healthy amount of sunlight. And for me personally, I feel that's healthy to go back out in the sun and then go inside, depending on how much sun you can handle. And I think there are biological differences, although all of us should be cautious. But I think some may be susceptible more than others to things like skin cancer, where others may be more disposed to spending longer amounts of time during the day out under the sun, for obvious reasons regarding evolution. So we're talking about going neutral and relaxation. And another thing I'll just go ahead and share with you, it's called the body of glass. Instead of resisting all of this stuff, let us say like all the negativity in the world, we're resisting it. And sometimes, put up a lot of energy in a barrier, in a mirror to resisting it is a big drain. Where if we go neutral, which was something else in this guided meditation, going neutral to it, visualizing a body of glass and not letting it stick to us, not feeling like we have to fight it. I used the martial arts soft defense analogy multiple times recently, as opposed to taking something head on. All that relates to that. So by studying Vipassana meditation, see, this is talking about fight or flight and why that's not good. And my response to that, as I'm reading this, without going into all of that, certain types of meditations like Vipassana meditation, breathing, observing the breath, without necessarily in that meditation breathing as deep as we can. That's a specific meditation, deep breathing for internal energy, and that should be done. But the Vipassana meditation, I'm not even enunciating it correctly. The purpose of that is not deep breathing, but it's to observe reality as it is and to get us out of the reactive monkey mind, or some could even say the rat mind. So that is an actual practice where people go and they practice for months in some cases. I was only exposed to 10 days. Couldn't wait to get away from it, in fact. But it's like 10 days of silence. Observe. You can listen to one of S.N. Goenka's guided meditations if you're curious what I sat through in 2002. But those are like early Alex Ansary experiences where I was identifying with, yes, Alex Ansary leaves the city entirely, and this is before I got totally sober. I would go long periods, right, in my recovery periods. And I would go through cycles, and I would get better, or I evolved to the point where enough was enough in 2004. But already early on in 2002, during periods in which I'm going to school and I'm working, and that was my first time going back to community college and taking a writing class. And working at the Benson Hotel. And those were highlights. This is way before cable access. So going somewhere to rural Washington, signing up, it was free. Vipassana is free. They teach it to prisoners in India. And it is seen as something that has rehabilitated a lot of people that have had behavioral issues or issues with being overly reactive. And so like the whole nature of it is to relax to the point where we become aware of what's going on with us at the cellular level. And I'm not saying that I've reached that level of awareness, but it's about going deep into the microcosm. As we go deeper and less reactive and become more equanimous, we become more aware. As we resist less, we become more aware or more powerful. There's a number of different ways like this process can be described and how it overlays with other things. And so a big introduction to this book, Visualization for Change. And let me know if you're really interested in some of this content, because, I'm considering reading more of this book and then sharing with you maybe some things that are totally new to me. And things perhaps that I already do know that I think are worthy of resharing with you. But I'm going to wrap this up because ultimately, like, we're all affected by this. We can be, in conclusion, adversely affected to other people's mental health crises without even knowing it. Are your thoughts your own? Are you sure that you haven't had certain fears that basically were your neighbors? There could be a certain fear of, being shot or something, and then you can look at the cat that's hanging around. Oh, somebody shot the cat that's been hanging around my tiny home. the mother cat that had the kittens. Somebody shot the cat at some point and had a wound there. So I realized like there's a reason why it wasn't trusting humans very much. And who knows, maybe that instinct of that genetic trauma of being hurt by a human was passed on to her offspring. How are we any different? There is ancestral programming in addition to our own programming from what we've gone through in the world. And then there could be, and this is controversial for those that don't believe in a soul, but where your soul's been. And I believe that we can have a little bit of an overlay of that energy as well that we have to clear ourselves from. And so these are really interesting times. These are really interesting times because in the old days, they would just lobotomize people. Now in the day and age, people can actually heal themselves with knowledge. They can use visualizations to bring themselves up. They can realize why they're in a sunken state. They can actually find a book that actually teaches them about mind control, not so they apply mind control on others, although some people I think have gotten some ideas, you know what I'm saying? They act like they're using some of that Illuminati hand signs, some of those YouTube videos. Not like I'm mentioning any names, but people can look and understand, and they can learn from other videos or books, oh, this is how they've kept people in the spell. And then somebody could wake up like that. A light bulb can go off above their head that is so powerful and bright that it clears out the darkness and makes visible what was buried and hidden. And they can see their own programming play out, right? By seeing people actually discuss it and analyze it without attacking the people that have been programmed, without hating them. Maybe it's not right to call everybody a zombie that's stuck in that programming. I mean, we look for words, but we're actually trying to help. We're not trying to harm. And so, actually had a lot of fun bringing this to you. Until next time, I'm Alex Hansen reminding you the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within.